The scientific revolution lasted between the 1500s and 1700s. It all started with Tycho Brahe. He observed a supernova for 18 months, recorded the first comet in 1577, and charted and observed 750 stars and heavenly bodies. But his greatest addition to modern science was him being sure to use his very careful, detailed, and accurate records on everything he did. But his greatest addition to modern science was him being sure to use very careful, detailed, and accurate records on everything he did. The way he did things laid the method and groundwork for how other scientists would do their experiments. His contributions are still applicable in modern science today. The age of exploration disproved some of the ancient Greek philosophers' theories, but after that people started to wonder what other theories are wrong. Nicholas Copernicus was the first man brave enough to publish a book that started the scientific revolution. It was called The Revolution of the Celestial Spheres. He stated that the rotation theories that the Catholic Church believed were true were actually false, and that the Earth in reality revolves around the Sun. He supported a heliocentric model of our solar system. This had a huge effect and influence on other leading scientists. He is now known as the father of modern astronomy due to how accurate he was. Galileo is another one of the most well-known figures of the scientific revolution. He created a telescope that most resembles the one we use today. He viewed the moon and saw that the surface wasn't perfect. There were craters and mountains, and viewed that Jupiter had moons orbiting it. Galileo did tests and experiments to see whether his theories were correct or not, and due to that fact, he is considered the father of experimental science. He wrote a very controversial book called Dialogue of the Two Chief World Systems, in which two characters held a discussion between a helio and geocentric theory. This book was seen as heresy, and he was put on trial, in which he tried to stay true to his beliefs, but he changed his mind when they threatened to kill him. 30 years after Galileo's trial, the scientific revolution started some of its best years, all because of Sir Isaac Newton, who was a fantastic mathematician. He reviewed the work of other scientists and then made his own observations that have been proven to be correct in modern science. He wrote 4 fundamental laws. The first is the law of gravity, and the other 3 are laws of motion and explain how the universe is like a machine, and it describes how everything moves in space. Tycho Brahe was given an island by the king at that time to build his own observatory, and he needed an assistant. His assistant was Johannes Kepler, who studied the orbits of the planet. Kepler disproved Copernicus's theory that the Earth's orbit was circular and proved that it was elliptical by studying Mars. The discovery built upon Copernicus's theories instead of destroying them. He discovered that the closer to the sun a planet was, the faster it spun. This theory helped Newton create his theories years later. He had many other inventions and discoveries. He invented glasses for near and far-sighted and wrote a book about it, and discovered the human eye sees upside down. Francis Bacon was fascinated with how the first scientists made observations and realized that the science should be approached systematically with close observation, and that it should be the only way to find the truth of all things. Francis Bacon wrote a book about approaching scientific research. It was later called the scientific method and is still used today. Finally, another contributor to the revolution was René Descartes. He said that all past science and knowledge should be doubted until proven to be true rather than accepted by faith. This contradicted the church and what people believed at the time. He said only clear and logical thinking could provide the truth. He wrote a book called Discourse on the Method, and he wrote it in French rather than in Latin so all common men and women could learn to think for themselves. He also wrote a book called Proofs of God's Existence, which proved that God exists. The order of scientists, from top to bottom and left to right, are Newton, Kepler, Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Descartes, Galileo, and finally Francis Bacon.